In this chapter, we're going to take a brief look at PHP's handling of objects. Before we do that, there's a couple of things that I should say right up front. First of all, it's perfectly possible to write very effective, efficient PHP script that never touches object-oriented programming, that never defines a class, never instantiates an object, and never sets up any kind of object-oriented structure. Another thing that I should point out is that PHP is not, at its heart, an object-oriented programming language. PHP is built from C rather than C++, and is therefore, at its heart, a procedural kind of language. This is not necessarily a bad thing, as anyone who has tangled with ASP's different collection of objects that it uses would appreciate. However, object-oriented programming can be very powerful, and PHP users are increasingly taking advantage of the object-oriented functionality which has been greatly expanded since PHP 4. In this chapter, we're going to take a look at classes and objects. Now, class is a blueprint for objects to be created within a script, and the objects are the instances of the class. Once we get to our text editor and get scripting, this will make a little more sense. Also, through this chapter, we're going to briefly cover these different topics: attributes, methods of objects, instantiating objects, constructor functions for classes, encapsulation, object inheritance, polymorphism, and aggregation. Now, if that sounds like a lot of tongue-twisting words, then let's get away from the theory and go to our text editor and write a little example. We're not going to get into any of the theory or philosophy of object-oriented programming. It wouldn't be very helpful. We don't have time, and it's not going to make you any the wiser about how to make efficient PHP scripts. What we are going to do is to draw up some very simple examples so that you can get in and start making your own classes and objects and working with the object-oriented functionality that PHP does offer. Let's create our first class. We're going to use the keyword class, and straight after that we're going to name our class. It's usual to name a class with a capital letter. We're going to put a pair of curly brackets to enclose our class definition. Now, class definition can be made up of a lot of different things, but for now we're just going to declare a simple attribute, and that is the legs attribute. We're just going to define it in the same way as we define a variable, but we're going to use the var keyword before it. Now we have our class, and what this class is no more than a blueprint for the creation of cats. It's not a cat itself, it's simply a bit of knowledge, like genetic knowledge if you will. This is like the DNA, very basic DNA for creating a cat. Now all we know about this cat at the moment is that it has 4 legs. And this is still a hypothetical cat until we choose to create a new cat. How we do that is to give the cat a name, same as we name a variable, and then we use this syntax. We use a new keyword to indicate that we want to create an object or instantiate an object in object-oriented speak, and then we use our class name, and then we put the two brackets either side here, just like we're calling a function, which in a way we are. What this does is that we now have an instance of the cat class called tiddles that we can do whatever we want with. Let's have a look at tiddles legs attribute. And when we want to call an attribute of an object, we need to use this operator, a minus operator followed by a greater than. It forms a little arrow shape. This is similar to the syntax in C++ and may look a little confusing if you're used to the dot syntax of, say, VB or Java. Notice that you don't use the $ before the legs attribute. Let's try this in our browser and we'll see what happens. If we refresh our browser, as we can see, our cat Tiddles has had its legs counted and it has 4. The reason that PHP knew that our Tiddles object has 4 legs is that every cat object that we create is going to have 4 legs, no matter what we call it. We're going to have a bit more look in detail at properties and methods of objects in our next movie.